Hiya, this is Tina Capricorn, just joining you for my first ever Authors After Dark live broadcast. We're going to have Lee joining us in just a minute. You might know Lee from the Stephen King Writers Challenge. This week we did or this year I would say. This year we did it. It's my second time doing it this year. We just completed it in March. That was totally Lee's brainchild. She is the queen of writing challenges. If you want to do a writing challenge, Lee is the person to check out. She's on Instagram at Lee Will Write That. If you want to know more, check out my post on my profile, Authors After Dark. And she just started a freelance editing career, and she's also an avid writer and reader, and all-around bookstagrammer. And so she's going to join us here in a few minutes in my writer's lounge, which is just my living room, aka my office. And we're going to just talk about craft. I've been taking an editing course through the local community college, and it's really enlightening. I would really recommend any writer take an editing course. Because it's been very eye-opening for me. It's been very eye-opening. Sorry, Yassine, I can't do it today. I'm talking to Lee in here in just a few minutes, but next time. The editing course I've been taking has been really eye-opening in terms of just understanding more about the editor and writer relationship, and what kind of responsibilities you have as a writer to communicate with your editor. And not only that, as an editor, like what is, the nuances of that relationship. But we're going to go over today some pretty basic day one stuff, some stuff that, you might have a manuscript right now that you are ready to show someone else, or at least get an outside opinion. Haley.
Right now, I'm so excited. But you might be a person that has a manuscript right now that you're ready to show someone else, and you might need some feedback. And you might need feedback from hopefully a professional. You can show it to your sister, your friend, your neighbor. Haley!
Hey!
Hey, Lee's here! Lee, I'm just talking about writers who are in a position in their relationship with their manuscript that are ready to show it to someone else, but they don't know who, and they want to know what the next step is. And as a freelancer, I feel like all the layers of editing.
Yeah.
There's you finish the really rough part, and then you have to kind of go through and fine tune it. But that's also an opportunity to do developmental edits, when it's in that really rough stage.
Definitely.
Before I get too deep into editing, because I can talk about it all day, Lee, I've never actually talked to you virtually. I've always just texted you. So hi. It's so
hi. Good to finally put a face with a name with a name.
Yeah, exactly. I was talking earlier before you.
I'm feeling a little bereft now because you definitely have. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
I was saying I feel a little bereft because I didn't knock out the cool glasses for today. Your glasses are so awesome. I kind of want a pair. It's so cool.
Oh, thank you. Zenni Optical, these for $15, makes it possible to have the stylish glasses, I will say, on a budget. So yeah, we're talking about editing, and I've done 2 writing challenges with you. I know that you're...
I just lost audio. Can you still hear me?
I can still hear you. Can you still hear me?
That is definitely a yes, and I do.
Can you hear me now?
Nope, still nothing.
I can hear you.
1 sec. 2 seconds in, 2 seconds.
That's okay.
Try this again.
While she sorts out her
All right, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can totally hear you.
No, I can't hear you.
Oh, no.
I'm going to have to grab another set of earphones. It'll just take me 2 seconds. So I got to peace out, but I will be back.
Okay, I will talk about editing in the meantime, no worries.
Let me get on out of here.
This is what happens when you have a live show for the very first time. Lee will be back when she gets her earphone situation sorted out. But yeah, I just wanted to talk about editing for anyone who might be at a point in their manuscript where they're ready to take it to the next level. It's your baby, it's your dream that you're holding in your hand, but you know it needs work, you know it needs something. And that's really a great time to have an outside eye look at your manuscript. In addition to that, too, before you start self-editing, it's a really good idea to just let your manuscript rest for like a week or two. I've done 3 weeks. You know, definitely keep yourself fresh, but away from it because your brain is so used to those words, it will just read right over it. And so it makes kind of that time, you know, you're not editing at your best. You kind of need to trick your brain too. Don't read it like in the same format that you wrote it in is a really great tip that I've actually started using recently on Shadowglass and book 2 of the Forgotten Queen series. I have printed them completely out. I wrote them on the computer, but when it was time for me to use some self-edits and really kind of, you know, tighten up the story before I let anyone read it, including an editor or a beta reader, I printed it out and I've gone through longhand. You've probably seen photos. Oh, he's coming back. You've probably seen photos on my profile of me doing longhand. This is the first time I've done it, and it's actually been incredibly helpful to view my entire manuscript in a separate format. Hey, Lee.
Hey, I'm back.
You're back. Can you hear me?
I can, and can you hear me?
I can totally hear you. This is great. Woo-hoo. No big deal. No big deal. I can talk about writing all day, so I've just filled the time with talking about writing and editing. And I'm talking about when writers are at a point where they're ready to kind of really tighten up a story. It's really, really rough. And maybe after they've let it rest for a little while. And that's where I am in Shadowglass right now. And I let it rest for about 2 weeks, and then I printed it out because I was reading that viewing your manuscript and interacting with it in a totally different format than the way you wrote it is really good for tricking your brain into kind of seeing it in a different light. Have you had any experience with that?
Yeah, change the program it's in, maybe copy it over to text or Word if you're using Scrivener, change the font slightly. There are free services online where you can actually have parts of your book read back to you with an automated voice. Yeah, completely free, and you would be amazed at how much clearer the little itty-bitty edits sound when someone's reading it back to you. And you can't always, you know, kind of like commandeer like a grandparent or stranger off the street. So checking that out as well is fantastic. But yeah, even something as simple as changing the program can have a huge impact on how you see the story overall. It really does give it a second set of eyes. Now, you said that you're resting your current draft of your next novel, which, of course, is going to be a smash hit. We all know this.
Yeah, I am. And I know that it has some missing scenes, but to be honest, I have such a distance from it. I need to go through it and figure out what those scenes are, then continue writing. You know what I mean? I'm at that point where I need to fill in the gaps. I need to stop. I'm at 100K. I need to take stock of my story and see where I'm at. There's probably some scenes that don't need to be in there. But yeah, in Shadowglass right now, oh, thank you, Douglas. In Shadowglass right now, I'm doing things. I've got a sample page right here. You can see it. I printed it out, and I'm going through longhand, and I've just like gotten rid of stuff, and like just interacting with my document, my manuscript like this has been immeasurably valuable. I feel much more in tune with the structure and body of my story than I did with the Anchor of Time, which granted, the Anchor of Time was a labor of love written over 6 years on my lunch break in the morning, just like all these little pieces. Whereas now that I'm doing this as a part-time career, I have a lot different structure and, you know, information, education, all of the above, which is where I come to you. I met you last year in March during the first ever Stephen King Writing Challenge for me. Was that the first one ever for you?
I believe it was technically the first one ever when I did it last year. We were all in the middle of the pandemic. I was looking for something to take my brain off of it. And funnily enough, the book I originally used is right here. And I know, right?
Any writer, if you're looking at this right now, any writer, I highly recommend reading On Writing by Stephen King. Excuse me. It's amazing. One of my idols, Alicia Hyder, I think she used to read it like every year as like a writer's pilgrimage. But it's one part memoir and one part actual information on the craft. What's your favorite part of it?
I really loved it when he kind of broke down how his writing process evolved and then how it changed after that horrible incident with him in the van. And it was interesting because he kind of utilized that horrible incident, which still, you can tell, it's like that needle in the back of your brain, so to speak.
Yeah.
But he was able to use that in terms of how he moved his work forward and how he used his work essentially as a crutch. So that whole thing where it kind of ties in everything he was doing when he was building his toolkit, as he says, and how he was creating that structure. And then showing how that was kind of like the crutch that got him through that horrible experience, and that experience also changed the way that he wrote.
Mm-hmm.
Could you put the title and the author in the comments, someone's saying. Oh.
We certainly can do that, Douglas. And if I forget, I will message you. Yeah, it's so great. For me as a writer and as someone who has published one book and knows how hard that is, and obviously he's doing something very different. He had an agent submitted, and I love the story of that he had the railroad spike over his desk, and he would put his reject notices and full. Railroad spikes are like, they're long,
thick,
and so that many rejects, and he was submitting to magazines and all that kind of stuff, and he actually carried his breakout novel he threw in the trash, and his wife rescued.
Yep. And the funny thing is, in the book, it actually does kind of go into more depth and detail about how big of a resource Tabitha was. Mm-hmm. When he's talking about his revision process, which is something we're talking about right now, he said that Tabitha was instrumental in terms of who he was going to write, in terms of the audience he was going to shoot at, and that when he opened the doors, he liked to say, and actually started handing out the copies and asking people for feedback, she was the one person whose opinion he always counted on. Mm-hmm. And that she's an established and respected author in and of herself, but so many years. Yeah, she put towards making sure that Stephen had everything that he had and had that support. Wow. So he's and you don't often see that with author memoirs. Just the amount of work that their friends and family play in terms of support when it goes through. But also, he was very unique because he knew that his wife was an excellent writer, a fantastic poet, and a writer, an editor, and a poet all in one. So he knew that when he wanted her feedback, he knew he was going to a source that he could trust. Not only because she was his wife, but because he knew that she knew her stuff.
Yeah.
That's very rare. Most of us have family members who will support us, make sure we get across that finish line, but they don't understand what it takes to actually edit a book.
It's really interesting if you're not in the writerly world. Like my husband is not. He's very supportive of giving me my time. No one in the house to read it. No one. I'm the only reader. And so I'm like, I wrote 3,000 words today. Oh my God, why would you do that? Is usually the response I get. Like, how can you do that? And I'm like, I would do more. I'm just tired. But yeah, it's instrumental having that support. You cannot write a book in a vacuum. You need outside support, and I think there's also, in the very, very baby stage of my writing career, when I was not even thinking about publishing, I didn't really understand editing, and I know there are indie authors out there that publish without doing it. I'm not saying a lot, but it's like no one writes a perfect first draft. No one, not even Stephen fucking King. Okay, everyone's rough drafts suck. That's what revision is for. That's what editing is for. Editing makes the book. you know, and that is where the writer can really crack open that world that they kind of just, whoa, you know. At least that's how I write. I write the first draft, or at least this time I did. I wrote the first draft and I didn't look back. I just kept writing. And so I have big blocks of where I write like elephant in all caps where I didn't know what to write, you know, or I didn't know,
Fair.
or I didn't have a name. You know, you can't think of a brilliant name on the fly, so just fill it in and just keep writing. Don't interrupt the flow.
Exactly. Because if you need a brilliant name, then you're going to start to research a brilliant name, and if you start to research a brilliant name, there goes the next 2 weeks of your writing process.
Yeah, yeah. You need to keep your writing time, and treat it like a job. Treat it like you're going to work. It's not a hobby. You're not getting paid, and you definitely won't get rich unless you have a shooting star or great ways of marketing. I don't know. Again, that is people outside yourself. So you can't produce, I feel like, a quality book without outside resources. And it starts with editing, in my opinion, and then cover, and then marketing. You know, work your way up. But Lee, I'm going to draw some questions out of a hat that we talked about. Here's my hat.
Okay.
Beautiful hat.
Nice hat.
Nice
Respectful hat.
It's a cool hat. Green Man Brewery here locally. What is a manuscript key, and why is it important for your editor? And how does it help your author-editor relationship? Do you know what a key is? Have you heard of that?
I have to confess, the last few times I haven't been using a key. So, I actually have a slightly different process. So, what is a manuscript key?
So this is something I recently learned about in my editing class, and I think it pertains a lot to nonfiction, but I think it's great for fiction as well. In the example that I learned about it, it was for nonfiction, but it's basically for not only unique spellings, like hyphenated words, because hyphenated words, I mean, you'll go crazy trying to realize what should be hyphenated and what should not be. Consistency is key, you know? And so that's where a manuscript key comes in. You have a key of like all of your crazy name places, first of all, if you use fantasy, or even not, whatever, all of your character names, but then also like, I'm going to always spell out blah, blah, blah as a hyphenated word. Well, then you put that in the key. So then your editor knows.
So it's not Ashley spelled Leigh, not Ashley spelled Lee.
Yeah,
It's Ashley.
it's when I send you a manuscript and you're like, wait, did she spell Ashley different on page 97 than on 93? I'm going to check the key. And then you would know. And I think that's particularly great because I think a poor little George R. R. Martin's editor and all those damn character names, I mean, they had to have a like a tome of keys, you know, with all that stuff. Now when you do your freelance, do you normally get a key, or is that something common with the kind of work that you've been doing?
The work I've been doing so far, normally it's a smaller cast, it's a smaller list of characters, and I am extremely, I don't know if you can say anal retentive on Instagram, but I am just obsessive. All right, well, my last name is Polish. It has 12 letters, and it has W's and Z's in it from a very young age.
I found it recently, and I was like, all right.
I've got this thing about making sure that people's names are right, because the number of times that I've had somebody look down at like a piece of paper or a roll call, and all of a sudden they're like, and then they spell my name wrong every single time for the first 2 days. Like, it's a thing for me. So when it comes to names, I remember names just because it's just like I'm not going to let this go, because even if this person's a fictional character, I'm going to be the one who spells your name right all the time. So.
Nice.
So I tend to get very anal retentive when it comes to names, so I'm usually good with that.
Do you ever develop your own key as you're going along when you're editing, or is like your mind a steel trap and that's good?
Well, my mind isn't a steel trap about a lot of things. When it comes to names and places, it is. However, there are some times when I notice that an author or a writer is saying, "Oh, in the land of Beltane, the land of Fluffyton," but it turns out, no, wait. The more you read into the context clues, it's the same one, and then it starts turning to Sherbertville or whatever. That's when you have to go back and go, okay, I know that we're working on this, but what's the one name that we have to have consistently? And I've literally gone through with somebody one-on-one saying, okay, here you say Sherbertville, here you say Fluffyton, what are we doing here? I've actually been working on a memoir. It's more of a Romana Clef. But the gal in question because it has to deal with adoption and some really ugly family dynamics. She's
Yeah.
trying to create it so that the manuscript itself has false names,
Mhm.
but the thing is, in the current version, she keeps on giving me drafts with both the false names and the real names mixed in together. So half the time you're not quite sure what's happening.
Oh, yeah.
But but because I spent so much time with her and with these characters, I'm like, wait a minute, are we talking about Felix here? Is this Felix or is this Fred? You just make sure I know how to go through that. So
Yeah. So that is important though. Name and also descriptions, because I feel like on one page, oh, he's blue eyes,
sure,
and then
yeah.
later, he's got brown eyes.
Mhm.
So descriptions can also go in keys is another side note I would have. Or a lot of times I'll even do like, and this is like when I want to be the most like organized writer that I can be, which I'm not always, but ideally I want to make it like a grimoire of like all of my characters in my world. And so every character would have like their own page, and I would do like a drawing and like description. But you don't have to do that crazy. You can just get a notebook and do that. But that's really
Right.
good for you as a writer when you're plugging along and you're like, and then was beautiful blue or was it brown? You can look it up and not really,
Yep.
you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
the more you help yourself, the better you'll be at the time you set aside. You know, because we all don't have a million hours to write, so it's best to make it yourself organized so that the time you do have, you get it done.
Yeah. Well, actually, that kind of brings up another thing. When it comes to editing as well as writing,
Mhm.
you have to kind of adjust yourself depending on people's techniques. Now, would you consider yourself a planner or a pantser overall when it comes to the initial write down?
Me?
Yeah.
I think that I did a very much of a pants job on my first book, and now
Hmm.
I'm sewing what I reaped, and now I'm trying to plan because I'm like, what did I write? What did I do? What's this book about? And I'm working on a second edition right now just to do some housekeeping, and it's been really great as I also now switch to doing really, you know, that first rough pass of the Shadow Blast, which is a prequel, um, and then then when I go into book two, it'll be great that I recently did a refresh because I have a friend working on it, but I'm just going through and reading it because I'm like, I need to know this lore. And I didn't make a key. I didn't know what keys were. The Wild and Wonderful World of Keys, I recently learned about. I'm like, that makes so much sense. Which I will include Leslie Note style to whoever edits the next novel. You know what I mean? Like, here's my really organized spreadsheet.
Hey, if you want to go full Leslie Note, you have to get the binder. You have to
It's
get the
true.
binder
True.
with the cute tabs. You have to make sure it's color coordinated.
But true story, I did get a binder because I'm going to print out book two, and I got a 3-hole punch, and I'm like, well, this is happening now. So I got myself a really nice binder that has
Mhm.
areas I can store pencils in, so I like to like proofread in different colors depending on how I feel that day.
Yeah.
So
Well, it should.
but go ahead.
I said it shows exactly how you were feeling at different times. If something starts switching back
Yeah,
and forth, like, this needs to be gold, no, this needs to be blue,
yeah.
no, this needs to be red, then you know you have to rewrite that whole section. Because if it just keeps changing, it means you're looking for the right answer, which means the right answer is none of the ones you got.
None of the ones. It's true. All right, this is an important one that I drew out of the hat. Why shouldn't I let my family member edit it for free? Why should we let our family edit our work?
Well,
Beta
let me
reading's
ask you.
fine. Beta reading's fine. Not
Eh?
edit.
Let me ask you this:
Okay,
does your husband love you?
he does.
Do your parents love you?
Mm-hmm.
Do any of the small animals in your house who somehow know how to read and give you feedback, do they also love you?
Yes,
Then you can't trust them.
that's right.
Because the first thing someone's going to do is protect you. They know how big this is. They know how big it is that you finished a book. They couldn't finish a book. They have seen you work your butt off for years to finish this book. They know how important it is. They know how the cruel world that you're about to send this out into.
Mm-hmm.
So if they do see it, because they love you and they want to protect you.
Mm-hmm.
But let's say that we're in a
which I've had.
Do you think that they want to be the first person to tell you that something stinks? No, exactly. Because it's going to store. So whatever you have in the manuscript that needs work, even if you yourself know that it needs to change, if it stays around, it's just going to get worse and worse. And you're going to say, well, they didn't trust me last time, or they didn't like it last time. And it's not their fault. It's not your fault. It's just the way this works. Writing something is the act of reaching into your soul, tearing off a piece, and putting it on the page. Yeah. Long story short, that's what it is at the end. So you want somebody who you will not, every time you see them, have like smears of soul juice on their faces every time you see them. Like, he's a wonderful husband, but he told me that I wasn't using the Oxford comma correctly. Yeah. So you got to go outside. If a dear friend who you're willing to, kind of work with, or who you've worked with in the past, that can be okay for an editor. But when it comes to editing, do not use your friends, do not use your family, do not use people that you'll want to see every day. Because an editor, you can cut and leave, but you can't cut and leave your husband, especially if he loves you. So.
Perfectly said. Perfectly.
I hate to say this, but I'm running into technical difficulties again. How are you doing on your end?
I can't speak to, but I can.
All right, I'm going to leave, and then I'm going to come back. I'm going to see if that works. Hang on 1 second.
Technical difficulties, everyone. Premiere while Lee was leaving, thanks everyone for joining. This is the first episode of Authors After Dark. It's my writer's lounge, where I just want to get together with other writers, authors, creatives, bloggers, whoever you are, and just talk to you about craft, what you do. Lee and I have been friends. We met last year. Around this time, probably a little early, maybe March, for the Stephen King Writing Challenge, which is a challenge she developed. It's where you emulate the workday of Stephen King. Oh, Lee's coming back. And you emulate the workday of Stephen King. You write 2,000 words a day. You exercise for 30 minutes. You read for 30 minutes. Hello, Lee. Welcome back.
Hey.
I was just talking about the Stephen King Writing Challenge really quickly for anyone that's interested. We won't be doing it again until probably next year. But you host a lot of writing challenges. Is there anyone that's coming up that you're hosting?
I really want to do a challenge based on Neil Gaiman. He's one of my favorite authors, Stephen King notwithstanding. Don't call Stephen, but he's one of my favorites. And
that sounds amazing. I don't even know the details, and I want to do it.
Neil has this thing that I've heard in the past, and I want to get all the details on this before I come up with a stripped down challenge for us mere mortals. But Neil has this technique where he essentially simultaneously works on 2 books at the same time, or 2 projects at the same time. Yeah, so he has specific times during the day when he works on the new stuff, and he just kind of info dumps and gets everything on the page for like that brand new thing. But then he also has a designated time throughout the day to go back and pull his old stuff, rework his old stuff, and kind of, it's like putting it in a drawer and forgetting it, but on steroids. So if done correctly, apparently, it allows you to kind of get that, mind rest time that you would normally get by just sticking your stuff in a drawer while actually getting work done. But I'm going to do some more research.
Oh, I want to try that. It sounds painful, but I want to try that. Oh, you like the painful ones. You like the most painful challenges.
Yes.
The ones I love you face down on the floor at the end of the challenge. That's the kind of writing challenges Lee likes, you guys.
well, and I've documented this pretty well on my little blog professional website. But the first time I did the Stephen King Writing Challenge, every day I just kind of did a quick little blog about what my schedule looked like that day. And there were just huge chunks of certain days of going, pain, agony, I hate myself, why did I do this to myself? But at the end, I'm like, I kind of want to do that again. That was kind of fun. I want to do that again.
I really credit doing that challenge with you at the beginning of the lockdown, which, I didn't know then was me transitioning to working from home and changing my career completely. With being able to center my workday around really healthy habits and also consistently putting down words. And I think, I went from a lunchtime writer and a early morning writer when I was working my full-time day job at the salon to now, because of Stephen King, that practice. And it really is practice, you guys. It's just like a muscle. You got to sit down and you just got to write and don't judge yourself. Just get the words down. You cannot edit an empty page. Very difficult.
Exactly.
So just get it down. And I think and that's really like, I started book 2 at the challenge and I got 18,000 words down that challenge within, I think the first challenge was it 9 days or 10 days? And this time it was 2 weeks.
The first challenge was 1 week. Second challenge was 2 weeks. I think we have to top it out at 2 weeks because there were 1 or 2 people who we didn't hear from them for long stretches of time.
Yeah.
And it was like,
we like finished and I was like, oh God, I need a moment, you guys.
Yes.
And I just finished Shadow Glass when I decided to do a challenge. I'm not going to do it next time.
No.
I just rolled that into the challenge.
Well, I'm starting to think that we do need like that week before where I start sending out all those really obnoxious blogs where it's like, hey guys, just a reminder, make sure that there's nothing on your calendar, make sure your pets are fed, make sure your children know how to make the eggs, make sure, just all this list of stuff.
Hold cereal on the floor for them, they'll be fine.
Exactly.
Do not say that. Okay, I'm going to do one more question for you about editing. And then we'll wrap up because we've been talking for a minute, but this has been super awesome. I've so enjoyed talking to you. IRL. How do you know if you found the right editor for your book?
When they give you suggestions that don't make your skin crawl.
Okay.
It's not really, most decent editors out there can give you good advice, can give you good direction, can give you an idea about where your book needs to go from their perspective.
That's developmental editing you're talking about.
Exactly.
Okay.
Regular,
line editing, developmental.
Exactly. You need somebody who, when they look over your work, you're excited. You're like, I can't wait to show it to this person. I think even if this isn't where I need to go, I'm going to get such a great suggestions and feedback.
Mm-hmm.
Again, putting your work out there, especially when you just finished it and it's still brand new and maybe it's been sitting in a drawer for 2 or 3 weeks, but it's still your baby, showing it to anyone is going to be a very kind of a raw nerve, like bone on bone feeling. Exactly.
Yeah.
So the important thing is to get somebody who you're excited to work with. You're driven to give them the work and you are excited to hear their feedback.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really more of a gut feeling when it comes to design editing and developmental editing.
Mm-hmm.
But, obviously, see if they will take a sample of your work and give you like a test run, get some ideas about how they work. But everyone's going to be slightly different, but talk to your line editors and developmental editors, because if you find that one that you are excited to give your work to, it improves the quality of your work and it improves the speed at which you can complete that great novel.
Yeah.
Exponentially.
Yeah. And how, I'm going to just be really honest. I found my first, I would say, professional, like I paid someone to edit my book on Fiverr. I don't know if that's naughty to admit or not.
No, I don't see anything wrong with Fiverr. Some of the better writers I've met in writers groups and writers kind of synergy collectives. I've been in dozens of those things here and on the coast.
Mm-hmm.
And Fiverr has a surprising range in terms of who is available. Upwork is also a good one. They've really kind of, both Fiverr and Upwork have really stepped up their game, especially after the pandemic. You'd be surprised with the number of people and the amount of talent that are on both of those websites.
I was really impressed. And I'm such a baby author. I don't know if, and I've taken a lot of online education. I've done self-publishing formula. I'm still taking their classes. They're great. I would say start with their podcast before you invest, because there's a lot of free stuff. There's so much great free education out there before you pay for anything.
Yep.
And the Fiverr, just because it wasn't Fiverr, she wasn't cheap. I paid for what I got, and I feel like I did a great. Hey, Kel. Um, I feel like I got a great edit, and I got for who I was and what I needed. I found a great person. I'm not sure if I'm going to use her again. Um, I'm just not sure where I'm at and where I want to go.
And that's a sign that it wasn't the right fit. She might have been the greatest editor in the world, but if you're not excited to get the material to her, you got to look elsewhere. And there
Yeah,
are other options out there.
yeah. And then speaking to you, if there's anyone watching, do you have room in your schedule right now to take any other projects on if anyone was looking for editorial services?
I do have one or two spaces open. I'm always interested in reading projects. I love new fiction. I will literally read anything you put in front of me, and I will have a great time doing it. If you guys are curious, talk to me, email me, maybe send me a page of your work if you feel comfortable. But yeah, I'm always available and accessible to anyone who needs a little extra help.
That's awesome. I might even send you something. Who knows?
All right.
Uh, Let me see. I think that's all my questions. I think we're going to just wrap up here. Is there anything you want to add about the writer-editor relationship or anything about writing you'd like to share before we sign out on our first episode of Authors After Dark?
You're putting me under a lot of pressure here. I've got so many bon mots. I just want to spread throughout the universe, but my brain's shorting out. The only thing I can think of is just, when in doubt, show somebody.
Mm-hmm. And show someone that is invested and excited to read your work.
Exactly.
It doesn't, if your partner, like my partner doesn't want to read my work for, I think the exact reason you named earlier. He's literally said, "What if I don't like it?"
Mm-hmm.
He said that. And I respect that, it took a minute. I was a little, but now I respect it. And I'm like, one day you'll be ready, or it'll be an audiobook.
Just kind of quietly start playing in the background at little quiet moments.
Slowly, read it out loud. Well, I read all the naughty bits to him. There's one sex scene, so he knows that scene. But otherwise, he's like, "That's cool. Time travel. All right." But I think it's so important to show it to someone who is excited to read your work, even if it's your coworker or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Just don't let them edit it.
Exactly.
Just don't let them edit it.
Exactly. And if you really do get to a point where you're like, I don't know if I should do this, it's too soft, it's too new. Remember, the first step to getting millions of people to read your work is to get that first person to read it and then just to see what they say.
And everyone started out where you are. I kind of try to keep that in perspective. Every great writer that I've ever admired started out where I am in terms of knowledge at the very least,
Yes.
Talents and other things. But in terms of knowledge, everyone starts out a beginner, and everyone's first draft sucks. So
yes,
don't sweat it.
and Neil Gaiman and Stephen King both, because I've been reading them constantly, both say the first draft, you should never judge anything by the first draft. You should never assume that the first draft is going to be brilliant. No. Just get it down, show it to somebody, go from there.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Awesome. Well, cheers. Thanks, everyone, for joining me. Thanks for meeting me IRL. We love our continuing burgeoning writerly friendship.
Yay! Awesome. And I'm just grateful to see your shining face. It's so awesome.
Yeah, awesome. Cool. All right, everyone. Have a great Monday, and we'll see you next time on Authors After Dark.
Thanks, Tina.
Bye.